Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday evening to you all. Hope you guys have been having an awesome Memorial Day and a great 3-day weekend. Hopefully, most of y'all did have a 3-day weekend. Regardless, we're about to work our way into our Tuesday and moving on further into the week. In this evening's video, we're really going to break down the tropics and not just break it down, but we're going to, go pretty deep into this about what we do know about the possibility of impacts to Florida. And really, before that, obviously, our first named storm is a real possibility here, which would be Alex. So that's what we're going to break down. I understand a lot of you guys are probably tuning into the live coverage of what's unfolding right now across the north central U.S. and what we discussed this morning, and rightfully so, especially if you live up there in that area. Ongoing severe weather outbreak is occurring right now. So, I don't blame you for tuning in. There's a lot of great people who go live during this coverage. And by the way, that is something I would love to do going forward in the future. Currently, where I have a full-time job, this is kind of just a part-time hobby almost. It's kind of a part-time job now. It started out as a hobby, just like anything like this normally does. But in the future, maybe when I can do this full-time, God willing, if that's something God really wants for my life, hopefully I can go live for you guys when I'm not able to chase these storms. But my first goal will always be to actually be in the middle of these storms because I want to be in it and I want to storm chase and things like that. But in the meantime, I'm just trusting the process and doing videos like this to keep you guys updated. So anyways, now that I'm off that, let's go on and start breaking this down. If you guys have not subscribed, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. As always, if you guys got anything that I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it, and it gives others an opportunity to do so too. So let's get working with this here. Right now, we have that 40% chance of development of basically a tropical depression. This was the 2 p.m. update. Maybe this gets upgraded to a 50% risk by 8 p.m. So if you're watching this and it's a little bit later in the evening, this might be a 50% chance. Either way, kind of same deal. Chances are increasing for some kind of tropical development right in this region, the Yucatan Peninsula and area of the Gulf of Mexico and area of the Western Caribbean. We're going to see how if this area kind of switches up, changes geographical regions, or, if it increases, whatever it may be. This is going to be the origins of what possibly could develop. And it's all going to start from what's going on right now. You see this swirl? This is the Pacific, by the way. This is Mexico, Central America. This swirl right here is a landfalling hurricane. It just technically made landfall several minutes ago here in Mexico. So what's going to happen here is this is going to rapidly weaken as the center of the storm gets over land, and as any tropical system does, it'll begin to weaken after that. And as it does so, it'll weaken and then kind of meander over Central America and eventually over the Yucatan Peninsula right here, and then maybe drift into the Western Caribbean, somewhere in this area of the Gulf of Mexico and the western tip of Cuba. And then that's when our ball game really gets going for the potential for tropical development. So what we're going to do here is we're going to roll and take a look at the operational models first. We're going to look at the operational latest Euro, the latest GFS from 12Z, the Canadian, the Icon, then take a look at the Ensembles, and then start to dive deep into what's driving this as far as the steering currents, what could strengthen this. And, I'm not expecting a gigantic storm here, as far as a very strong storm, but I am expecting and starting to really think that it's a real possibility that we could have our first named storm on the Atlantic side, which is Alex. Agatha is the first named storm in the Eastern Pacific. So that's what we're paying attention to there. After we go through that, we're going to also talk about what's steering it, like I said, and we're going to talk about what kind of impacts we could potentially have and why. So stick with me if you want to know all that. We're going to gradually work our way through this. So let's take a look at the European first, and let's start this off. It's making landfall right now. This little, the rest of it will continue to meander across the areas of Central America and Mexico. And as it does, the steering currents are very weak. It's basically just trapped and ridging. That's why it's not moving very quickly. And I'll show you why here in a second. I'll give you a perfect explanation on why it's not moving quickly. But we're getting into Wednesday. We're getting into Thursday. This finally, as we're getting into overnight Thursday, maybe into Friday, give or take a day, because the timeline is still not completely there, finally starts, whatever's left of this, gets back over open water, maybe the southern Gulf of Mexico, just off the far northeast tip of the Yucatan. And then, obviously it's already impacting areas of western Cuba, because I really think this is going to be a lopsided storm. All the action is going to be on the east side probably. So as it gets going, Friday morning, Then we're getting into Friday afternoon. This is moving very slow, turtle pace here. So we're all the way into Saturday morning right here. And this is making impacts into Florida. Heavy rain, gusty winds. This is starting to move into Florida. There's a chance this could be kind of a hybrid setup as it kind of merges with the frontal influences here. We'll talk more about that here in the coming days on how that can impact the core of the storm, whether it's a shallow warm core or a cold core. It's not going to be a cold core, but there's a lot that goes into that also. But either way, the impacts are going to be the same at the surface as you're standing there. So this makes impact, if the Euro was correct, this makes landfall basically on the western, southwestern areas of the peninsula of Florida. Probably sometime Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, crosses the peninsula of Florida, gets back into open water off the eastern side of Florida. So we're getting into Sunday morning, next Sunday morning. And then it could potentially start to strengthen off the coast of the southeast and maybe, who knows, impact the Outer Banks, something like that. But this will be a moving probably away from the southeast, and then it's on out the way. The thing is, guys, is this is starting to become in the medium term, almost in the short term. So the GFS, this is what it does. Same kind of situation. It's a little bit quicker, but in general, about the same. They're kind of starting to merge a little bit as far as the timing. GFS pops a low pressure off right here for your Friday morning, but it's a lot further south. It actually pops it up south of the western end of Cuba, crosses Cuba as maybe a depression or very weak tropical storm, and starts to kind of move into the Bahamas as a depression or very weak tropical storm. And then it starts to move well out into the Atlantic, not really affecting anybody. So that's that. Now, I didn't even mention, but the Euro makes landfall in Florida as an all-out tropical storm. Not a hurricane, but probably just a weak to mid-level tropical storm. But it'll be Tropical Storm Alex. The Canadian model. What does the Canadian model show with this? Well, makes landfall like it's doing right now. Let's make sure we can get these panels rolling right. It's kind of all over the place, just like the other two models. Finally gets this back over water. Same kind of time frame as the Euro and GFS. And then it starts to just kind of finally get picked up, makes landfall at the far southern end of Florida as probably a depression or very weak tropical storm Saturday morning. Then it gets off the coast of Florida, the eastern coast of Florida and the southeast in general. Maybe strengthens a little bit, but all in all, it doesn't strengthen the storm much at all. The icon, latest icon, long-range icon, same kind of situation. It gets this piece of energy. Probably the icon is the most western solution with this. Friday morning, you have the low pressure sitting in the eastern areas of the Bay of Campeche, and eventually it rides right back over the Yucatan again, and then gets into the southern Gulf of Mexico Saturday morning. It's probably the slowest scenario also. Saturday afternoon, this is still out in the Gulf of Mexico with the Euro, the next slowest solution, has this already making landfall. So this moves, whatever this is, around Sunday midday as probably a depression or weak tropical storm into the peninsula of Florida. Works off the coast of the southeast, kind of like all the rest of them three models we just showed. And then maybe strengthens it into maybe a tropical storm, something. But either way, it doesn't really, the steering currents pushes it back out into the Atlantic. It doesn't curl it back into the southeast unless something dramatically changes. So let's take a look at the EPS ensembles. There goes my voice trying to, let me get a sip of water here. So we look at the ensembles for the European. The signal is really coming together. It's really becoming a lot more consolidated. We'll get this rolling here. We're getting into Friday morning, Friday afternoon. And we'll actually stop this around Friday, midday, early afternoon, this coming Friday. That is a strong signal. See all these numbers in this area and see how you got the brightening of the colors here in the yellow colors. And then you got 00, 02, 0, you got 99. 99 stands for a 999 millibar low. 00 stands for 1,000 millibar low. If you see a 02, that stands for 1,002 millibar low. So in general, don't look at this and think, oh, dadgum, is there going to be like 25 low pressures in the Gulf of Mexico? No. This is ensembles. It puts a bunch of runs together and tries to predict where the low pressure is going to be. So in general, this is a signal we look at. It's a bunch of runs put together into one run, if you will, if that makes sense. If you got any questions, definitely ask in the comments. And then we're getting into Friday evening, getting into Saturday morning. And I mean, the signal gets even stronger further out. So, I mean, this is under 7 days. all these little members, almost all of them make landfall on the peninsula of Florida here, the west coast of Florida. And that is a strong signal for a landfalling tropical system. Is this going to be a big hurricane? No, very unlikely, unless something major shifts. The most aggressive model right now is actually the European model, surprisingly, because normally it likes to stay pretty chill, right? So the GEFS ensembles, basically the ensembles for the GFS, this is what it does. It's a little bit more further south, which makes more sense because the GFS operational run is south, and it's a lot more scattered. It's all over the place. You got low pressures way over here in the Bay of Campeche for Friday afternoon. Low pressures way over here in the Bahamas. So it's all over the place. But in general, you know, there's a signal here, but it's a lot more broad and huge. And I think the GFS might be on an island here, and it might not be performing very well, but we'll have to see. So in general, what is steering this? I know a lot of people really aren't interested in this part, but you know, it's something big that we're going to talk about a lot more when we get a little bit deeper into the tropics. So what's steering this? Well, in general, let's just talk about the European. So we'll stop this for around Thursday afternoon. You got a low pressure coming off the Yucatan around overnight Thursday into Friday. And you see all this orange right here? This is basically ridging. There's not really an aggressive flow anywhere. What happens here is you got a little bit of troughing that shows up on the west in the eastern U.S. This kind of gets it doesn't pick it up necessarily. It kind of does and doesn't at the same time. But it kind of picks up the low pressure here, the troughing, the very light troughing in place, very light troughing. So it allows it to pick up the storm and pick up the speed a little bit of the storm, one, and two, it pulls it northeast. You know, you can almost see this little yellow area, you know, just it's like it's diving down and picking up the storm. The reason it's so slow right here is because the steering currents are very light, where it's basically just under the influence of light ridging, if you will. And, you know, it's just going to move very slow. It's just trapped. It's not trapped, but it's just meandering. Eventually, like I said, it gets picked up by this light troughing right here, and it pulls it into Florida. If this little trough wasn't here, maybe it would just keep meandering over Cuba. But this continues to get picked up, gets picked up even faster, and then it really gets into the flow of the North Atlantic, and then it takes off and picks up speed and heads on out as maybe a hurricane eventually. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. As far as, and you can see this too, you see how these lines, the wind streams right here, it tells you what flow it's going. So in general, this little troughing setting up right here is actually going to increase shear kind of all around the storm, but more so on the western side of the storm, on the northern side of the storm. So therefore, all the convection is going to be likely, most likely, almost expected, all on the eastern side of whatever circulation forms here. So this is where you're going to have all the moisture. So it's going to be a big-time east-weighted storm. There might not be no convection at all or rain on the west side, but maybe a little bit. But you got that troughing showing up, so therefore you got dry air that's really just taking out and drying up any kind of moisture on the western side of this low pressure. You can see it very well here. Here it is. It's got a little moisture bubble, but quickly that moisture bubble gets really decapitated here. And you see the brown here, that is dry air. The green is more moist air. So in general, you can see what happens here. We're getting into Saturday morning. All the moisture on this is pulling on the north, the northeast, the eastern side. And you got a bunch of dry air getting pulled down from this trough or whatever is going to be going on here. More than likely a weak troughing here, shoving more drier air into the eastern U.S. So in general, that's what happens here. It's a classic example. If this was a hurricane, you would call it a half-a-cane because all the convection is going to be on one side of this storm. It really is. But this is going to be big trouble for Florida. And in fact, we look at how much Florida potentially can see if we're taking the European as if it's going to happen. And we'll move through Friday, we'll move through Saturday, we'll move through all the way through Sunday morning. We'll stop it here. Look how much rain, based off the European, which is one run, Florida could potentially see. Several inches of rain, not just several, but I'm talking about half a foot of rain is possible for a large chunk of the southern half of the peninsula of Florida. So heavy, heavy rain is going to be a big deal from this storm, and gusty winds, of course, also. So We got a lot to figure out here. We do, but it's going to be interesting going forward. In general, this is chances to see a tropical storm. Basically, you get into that Saturday to Sunday time frame over Florida. You got a 50 to 60, 65% chance to see a tropical storm impacting Florida based off the EPS European Ensembles here. So, pretty stout signal. I really think this is going to become a much bigger topic here in the coming days, especially as confidence increases. But this is very well could be Alex and our first named tropical system of the 2022 hurricane season. So, God bless all y'all. I'll have y'all an update tomorrow. It's more severe weather expected across the U.S., so we'll talk about that. God bless all y'all. Have a great night.